And we'll get started. Welcome everybody to the Office of Research Trainees last workshop of 2025, the Fundamentals of Time Management. It's great to see so many people here today and more joining us as we speak. Just to introduce myself, my name is Jordan, and I'm the coordinator with the Office of Research Trainees. So before we dive into anything today, I always like to want to start today's session off with a land acknowledgement. So for thousands of years, this has been the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and most recently the Mississaugas of the Credit River. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon, Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people, from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and learn on this territory. You can all join me in a quick moment of reflecting on the land which you're currently located on, whether you are in Toronto, the GTA, or outside. All right, so just a few housekeeping notes to go over before we dive into our topic today. I do ask that you please remain muted and keep your videos off. We will be using Slido as well for a number of different purposes. The first and the main one being questions. So if you have any questions, we'll only be taking questions on Slido. So there'll be a link populated into the chat periodically throughout the workshop today. You can click that link and it'll bring you to Slido. Also, Slido is integrated into the slides, so you'll be able to scan a QR code or enter the code if you prefer accessing Slido on your device. This event has been organized and is being conducted per the ORT's Code of Conduct and Inclusivity Commitment, which is linked on the right using QR code. We do ask that this is followed and any non-compliance will result in removal from today's event. Your feedback is also really important to us, so there will be a couple of opportunities to share feedback with us. There'll be 2 Zoom polls, so they'll just pop up right onto your screen. One roughly at the midpoint of the session, and then one at the end, where again, there's just some multiple choice questions, where you can answer a couple of questions on your thoughts. And then there'll also be an opportunity to share written feedback through a survey. This will arrive in a browser when you physically leave the Zoom meeting. It'll open up in a browser. It'll also be included in an email that will be shared after the event. And also in that email, there'll also be a link to the recording of the workshop today. So you'll be able to access this information again, should you wish. I've already seen they've been turned on, which is great. But again, just want to reemphasize that closed captions are a great accessibility feature that Zoom has integrated into the interface. For those who don't know, or it needs to be, or you'd like to make some edits, captions can be turned on by clicking the Show Captions button in the bottom bar of the Zoom window. There's a little arrow on the right-hand side of that button, which you can click, and then that'll give you the opportunity to go into the caption settings and adjust things like font size, color, contrast, or anything else that suits your personal preferences or needs. So this is a great resource to check out. If you'd like to, again, explore additional Zoom accessibility features, there is a link on the slide through that QR code. Now, I just want to walk you through some of our key learning objectives for today. And so this will guide everything that we do over the next, 56 minutes or so. So first, we'll kick off by just defining time management and the foundational ideas that help us understand why these strategies work. Then we'll go into looking at some tools and techniques. So we'll first look at prioritization of frameworks. And this is where we'll explore tools and models, like things like the Eisenhower matrix or other decision-making methods. And this will determine what truly deserves your attention and what can be delayed, delegated, or dropped. Then we'll move over into scheduling and planning techniques and looking at different ways to structure your day or your week so that all of your priorities can show up nicely on your calendar. And we'll close it off with some strategies on how to reduce distractions and increase focus. So the first thing that we're going to do before we even jump into any of the content is I just wanted to start off with a time audit just to see what has been taking up the most of your time or attention in the last 48 hours and where your priorities need to, where your priorities lie. So using Slido, there's a link that was just popped into the chat, or you can go to slido.com and enter the code 3642266, or you can scan the QR code. This will is a place where you can share anything, whether it's in your professional life, your personal life. It's all anonymous. Just some things that are taking up your attention. So I'm seeing meetings, job searching, emails, sickness, meetings and document review, work, family and children, courses, communication. Emails is a big one. My paper and social media. Listening to a few more people typing. This is great. So basically what we're seeing here is that everyone has so much going on. And this is just in the last 48 hours, but especially things, moving forward or even further back and all these competing priorities. So thank you for sharing this and keeping all of this in mind, and all of your priorities will hopefully be able to give you some tools and some tips to manage your time effectively. So I just want to again start by redefining what time management actually means and what it is. So a lot of people think that time management really is about cramming as many tasks as you can into the same number of hours. Like if we can just organize everything perfectly, we'd magically fit everything in. But the truth is, time itself is fixed. We only get the same 24 hours in a day, no matter how much planning or planning that we do. But what isn't fixed is our attention. Our attention is flexible, so it fluctuates through the day. It can be directed either intentionally or unintentionally. And this is really the heart of effective time management. It's not about managing your time per se. It's really about managing your attention. And this in turn will then impact your use of time. But again, it's about managing your time. Not about managing your time, excuse me, it's about managing your attention. So throughout this session, I really want you to keep this in mind, that effective time management really uses the strategic use of attention. It's the more intentionally we can direct our focus, the more control we can gain over our workloads and on our stress levels. So when we apply time management principles consistently, we start to see meaningful improvements in the way we work. So these are just some of the high level points that we'll again break down further throughout the session. But clear prioritization reduces decision fatigue. So we can really distinguish between what's urgent and what's truly important, and eliminate some of that mental effort in deciding what to do next. Segmenting tasks really does create momentum. So breaking tasks and breaking your larger projects into smaller, clearer steps really provides some entry points into those projects and provides frequent wins. By making those steady progress on those small points, you really build that momentum, and that's incredibly motivating. You can also reducing switching. So your task switching really allows for deeper and higher quality work. So we're protecting our attention and limiting that unnecessary switching and preserving that energy and focus for what you need to do. And finally, all of these strategies really help us make more intentional use of our attention and in turn time. So again, let's break down all those points, and we'll first start talking about prioritization frameworks. So one of the biggest challenges in time management is learning to separate what feels urgent from what is actually important. So these two things aren't actually the same, although in the moment, in thinking about these tasks, they really can feel identical. So urgent tasks are the things that demand our immediate attention. Things like emails that have just popped up in your inbox, a last minute request, somebody tapping on your shoulder. And this urgency creates a reactive mindset. We feel like we have to respond right away, and that sense of immediacy can really make those tasks feel more valuable than they really are. But urgent doesn't always mean important. They can be important, but doesn't always mean that, because many urgent tasks can have little long-term impact. On the other hand, we have important tasks, which are the ones that contribute to our meaningful progress. So things like our planning, our writing, our strategic thinking, our long-term projects. This is work that requires deep focus. And sometimes these tasks don't come with built-in deadlines right away. Sometimes they may in the future, but these um, non-built-in deadlines really can make these tasks easy to postpone, especially when something urgent pops up. So really shifting from that reactive mindset to that proactive mindset can really help make prioritization clearer and directing our tasks to the things that matter the most, and simply then allowing the tasks that are shouting louder at you to take control. So one of the most widely used and effective prioritization tools that I want to tell you about today is called the Eisenhower Matrix, or more simply, the Urgent Important Matrix. This framework here helps us categorize tasks into 4 key groups and based on 2 different dimensions. So is the task important and is the task urgent? So I'll break that down a little bit more. So first, we separate tasks into those that are important versus not important. So important tasks are the ones that contribute directly to our long-term goals and key responsibilities. These are the tasks that actually and that genuinely matter. Then we have other tasks which we can look at as urgent or not important. Urgent versus not urgent. Urgent tasks demand immediate attention. So again, things like emails, deadlines, or last minute requests. These create pressure, but don't always add to that long-term value. So when we sort our tasks along these 2 axes, again, the important versus not important, urgent versus not urgent, we create 4 quadrants, and that helps us understand the nature of our work. So breaking down these 4 quadrants, first we have important and urgent tasks. And these are tasks that require immediate action. These are true priorities. Then we have important but not urgent tasks. And this is where that our strategic and long-term progress happens. These are the tasks that need intentional scheduling because they don't remind us that we're not always reminded to do them. Now we have not important but urgent tasks, and these often create busyness without meaningful impact. These are ideal for delegation, if that's possible, deferring, or some boundary setting. And last but not least, we have the not important and not urgent tasks. So these ones have little value and often create distractions. So if possible, we try to reduce or eliminate those category of tasks. So what's really great about this framework, it helps us distinguish reactive work. So responding to whatever pops up from our strategic work, which again aligns with our goals and requires our focus. This technique is especially valuable when you are doing your bigger scale planning. You're able to task and categorize things into these different quadrants and get a clear picture of where your attention needs to go over time. Now, again, I've given you that that overview of what it is, but how do you actually use it? And so we've looked at those quadrants, and this framework is, again, most powerful when you apply it consistently, and really the key here is honestly. So the step 1 in using this matrix has to do with listing all of your tasks. This step is key. So before you start doing anything, take a few minutes, write down everything you have that's on your plate, whether it's something really, really big, small tasks, you have lab work, email follow-ups, meetings, writing, everything that you have. The goal here is to really get a full picture of your workload so that you're not prioritizing based on your memory or a stress signal. This step is often overlooked, but it's essential because the tasks that we forget are often the ones that end up becoming urgent emergencies later. The second step is sorting the tasks into the 4 quadrants, honestly. And again, honesty here is really important. When you are categorizing your tasks, you can ask yourself, does this task contribute to my long-term goals? Is the urgency of this task real? Or does it just feel urgent? It's really tempting to put everything in that important and urgent category because it validates our stress. But the power of this matrix really comes from making those genuine descriptions, being brutally honest about what truly matters, what can wait, and what doesn't need your attention at all. After you've categorized your tasks in those 4 quadrants, you want to focus on scheduling your quadrant 2 tasks intentionally. So again, those are your important and not urgent tasks, because these are the ones that make those larger advancements within your research and support your long-term goals or require some of that deep thinking. But again, this is where your highest value your work lives. So when putting some focus onto these tasks will really help move your progress forward. One great thing to do here is treating these blocks like appointments with yourself, because without that intention, sometimes these tasks just won't happen. And the last thing, if eliminate or minimizing any of those quadrant 4 tasks, those not important, not urgent tasks, because they drain our time and they don't add a ton of meaningful value. So just to kind of sum this up, once you see the tasks laid out clearly, it'll help you choose whether you want to reduce them, you want to batch them, you want to automate them, and which ones you want to add focus to. So I want to just talk about also another simple but powerful tool that works beautifully for your daily prioritization. That Eisenhower matrix, which we just talked about, gives you that big picture structure. But the ABCDE method here really helps you make concrete decisions about what to tackle within your day. So this method was popularized by author and productivity expert Brian Tracy, and it's a really straightforward way to identify what tasks deserve your immediate attention and which ones can be postponed, delegated, or removed altogether. So there is some similarities with the Eisenhower matrix. But one of the defining features really comes down to assigning a letter to each of the tasks, and each of these letters corresponds to a consequence for not doing it. Well, let's walk through each of these categories. So the first you have A, your A category, which are your critical, must-do, your mission-critical tasks. They come with some serious consequences if they're not completed. So like you'll end up missing a deadline. There'll be some compliance issues. You'll see some stall in your progress. These are your highest priority items for the day, and ideally they should be done first. So think of these as your non-negotiables. Moving down, you have your B-level tasks, and these are your important tasks, but the consequences of not doing them are minor. These tasks matter, but they don't always carry that same urgency or weight as an A-level task. So it's suggested that you do your B tasks after your A tasks. Next, you have your nice to do tasks, and your letter C. And these ones don't have any real consequences if they're not done. These might be tasks that feel enjoyable or satisfying to do. So things, like reorganizing your files on your laptop, tweaking some slides for a presentation. But ultimately, they don't meaningfully move your goals forward. They often masquerade as productivity, but don't actually create overall progress. Then we have our D and E tasks, so delegate and eliminate. If delegation is possible, these are tasks that need to be done at some point, but maybe that you can either get some help from somebody else, or you can make a compromise with a lab mate about they have to make media this day, and you're using the same kind, and say, if you're able to do that this time, when it's my time to make media, I can make some for both of us, for example. Delegation here is a really great key part of reducing that cognitive load and removing some of those things out of your mind that you have to think about. And you have the elimination tasks, or your E tasks, which are ones you can just simply get rid of. They don't have any added value, and they're a distraction. So this method really is an excellent way for prioritization, especially if you're faced with really, really long to-do lists. And just to emphasize here too, there are, when it comes to prioritization, it's really helpful to remember that different tools serve different purposes. So the goal really isn't to pick one framework for the rest of your life and stick to it, and that's the only way you can do things. It's really to understand when things are important, to understand what each approach can do and how they can complement each other. So it's really the best to work with both of these methods together, since again, the Eisenhower matrix is more for that big picture planning, longer term, and the ABCDE method is great for that that day-to-day planning. So thinking about your priorities long-term and then how you can take those long-term priorities and chunk them up into your daily tasks. Great to use both of those that way. So just to sum up this section, I just want to provide you with some of those key takeaways and some common prioritization mistakes. So the first thing I just want to emphasize is confusing urgency with importance. So one of those biggest challenges here in prioritization is really distinguishing what feels urgent from what truly is important, because those urgent tasks are really yelling at you and are shouting at you the loudest. But again, they don't mean that they don't necessarily have those long-term values. It's really easy to overload that top priority category, your category A or your quadrant one, because sometimes everything seems urgent and important. But if every task is a crisis, this is when none of them are truly being prioritized. So really trying to think about them honestly and reevaluating your tasks frequently to recategorize as your progress moves forward. It's really important to always that you're not. It's important to eliminate your low value tasks. An easy thing is to keep them and because this work is easy sometimes, it's familiar and often satisfying, but this work quietly drains time and with the time that could be spent on more impactful things. And again, reacting instead of planning. It's really easy to react to a lot of different things coming at you. So just taken together, all of these mistakes, we can use prioritization more effectively and build workflows that are cleaner, calmer, and more aligned with what truly matters. Okay, so that's the end of our first section. So now we're just going to move over to looking at some practical scheduling and planning techniques to help you protect your attention and stay focused. So now we know what we need to do and we have an idea of the order that it needs to be done. But before, I'd just like to pop up another poll, just as we're leading into the topic of scheduling. I just wanted to understand a little bit from the group what your biggest challenges are when it comes to scheduling your work. I've outlined a few different points here. There may be others, but just kind of gauge an idea here. So the options are here. I underestimate. Ooh, things are moving. The day gets derailed by. Oh, these are moving around as I'm trying to read them. But so far, it seems like the most popular challenge right now is underestimating how long things will take. The day gets derailed by unexpected requests. I struggle to protect focus time. Absolutely. But definitely underestimating how long things. I agree that definitely can be a challenge. Great, I'm seeing it slow down now, so thank you for everyone who participated. So definitely, still moving, but ultimately what I'm seeing here is just kind of overarching from the group is I underestimate how long tasks will take seems to be one of the biggest challenges. So hopefully, again, as we're working through some of these planning techniques, we can hopefully optimize your scheduling, and then perhaps we'll make some more time in case things do take a little bit longer. So when thinking about your workflow, there are a few things to consider first before I walk you through some tips on planning a schedule. So task segmentation is something really important. This is the practice of breaking larger tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. This approach is especially helpful for overcoming procrastination, which often shows up because tasks are difficult, they're really big, vague, or are often overwhelming. So when we're working on a large task, perhaps we're writing a manuscript, you're preparing a presentation, you're starting to analyze a huge data set, our brains can interpret this as really heavy cognitive loads and creates a psychological barrier to getting started. And task segmentation does help lower that barrier. So by breaking a project into small, concrete steps, we can create some clear entry points into getting started into those tasks. So instead of thinking, I need to write this whole report, the task just becomes draft an introduction outline, or even breaking down even further, write 3 bullet points that you want to accomplish within that introduction. those smaller units feel a lot more doable, and it's the sense of manageability that makes it much easier to start. Another important consideration is context switching. So this is constantly shifting our attention from one task to another. So every time we switch tasks, our brain has to take a pause, reorient, and rebuild the mental context needed to focus. Even if the switch only takes a moment, it's a real cognitive cost. So this means that each switch drains mental energy. So like responding to an email while you're writing or checking a message in the middle of an analysis can really deplete the mental resources. So when these switches pile up, it contributes to a high cognitive load and makes it a lot harder to concentrate and think clearly. So to protect our attention, one of the most effective strategies is to minimizing jumping from one task to another. So there's like we can look at batching our tasks together, closing unused tabs, and silencing notifications or other things. But essentially, when you're reducing that cognitive load, you're limiting unnecessarily switching. You're preserving that attention for that high value work. Okay, so now I've introduced you some topics on how to thinking about your tasks and grouping them together. Now let's think about planning our time. So it's really easy to focus on only your daily schedules, but a well-structured weekly planning system will really give you a broader perspective and help you build a rhythm that really feels intentional, efficient, and balanced. So one of the key elements in planning, again, is batching those tasks for efficiency. So it helps with the cognitive load and the cognitive load. And so batching potentially means you're grouping your tasks together. And so like you're doing all of your emails in one block, for example. Another important part of weekly planning is setting anchor events. So these are your non-negotiables for the week that you've perhaps classified during your prioritization techniques that we shared with you. And so these non-negotiables could be like your meetings, again, some of those other anything that you've identified: meetings, teaching commitments, fixed experiment times, seminars, a specific deadline. And then by placing these anchor points within your calendar, then you can work back from those points to create a really realistic framework, and then build your week and your work around those fixed obligations. Another important piece is to just in your weekly flow is just ensuring that it feels balanced. It's not all just about productivity. It's also about sustainability. Is what you're planning sustainable? So making sure you're spreading out that deep work, the lighter tasks, and the other activities, and also making sure you're including personal commitments across the week. You'll avoid that overload on every single day and helping reduce that cognitive load and any of that last minute stress and makes your schedule feel a lot more manageable. Another weekly planning also gives us that framework. So you now know when you want things to happen, but you still need to understand some of the time that comes with it. And I understand that sometimes you do underestimate how long it takes, and that can be a challenge. But also test driving some of your timing and adjusting as you're redoing these different your scheduling can really help overcome that. And using time blocking, whether it's even hour by hour, is really great. So it helps turn your weekly plan into a clear, actionable schedule by assigning specific types of work at specific times. So this is really thinking about when you want to do some really difficult tasks, when you want to do your lighter tasks, and it really comes down to thinking about your energy levels and your natural rhythms. So it's important to think about the hours that you work the best at. If you're most focused in the morning, that's the ideal time to perhaps maybe do some data analysis or your writing. And then you can leave some lighter tasks for the afternoon, or like maybe your emails, maybe some more administrative tasks. So it's really important to match your energy levels to those time blocks. So essentially, time blocking really does turn your schedule into a tool that supports deliberate and intentional work and helps prevent the day from being dictated by interruptions as best as possible. And you can also schedule some time in for some of those unpredictable things if those are unavoidable. I just want to share here as well a real example of what a week could look like. And this is a screenshot from my calendar when I was in grad school. I love my calendar. I use it all the time. So just kind of looking at some of the things I've told you and how this applied to the calendar that I had when I was doing research. So the first thing that I did, of course, was mapping out those non-negotiables. What are the things that I had going on that I had to do? Um, During this week, it was Thanksgiving, so I had the whole family was getting together for dinner. I had to be there. I had teaching obligations. So I was a TA at the time. I had a lab meeting, and then I also was running experiments within that. One of the anchor points of that week was doing that running that experiment on the first day, and then subsequent follow-ups throughout the week. So I was really bound by some of those experimental requirements, and made sure that was all laid out first. I also looked at some of my important and urgent tasks throughout the week that really helped set up for experiments in the weeks after and following. So maintaining my cells, growing up other bacterial strains for experiments leading forward. Because if I didn't do any of that, then there would be consequences of not doing them. If I didn't have them, the consequence would be I couldn't do the lab work. Something else to note here is I like to plan my experiment, a lot of my lab work to the best of my ability around like the late afternoon, like the late morning. That's when I found I worked best at the benchtop and to be as efficient as I could doing those experiments. I also was trying to schedule in as well a little bit of personal time, with the workout class, going out for dinner, and also having lunch with my mom was something on this that week as well. Another thing that is also helpful in your calendar blocking are visual cues. Color coding your calendars is one of my favorite things. On this calendar at the time, what I was doing was breaking up my personal commitments versus my um, school or research commitments, with personal being in blue and research being in green. But as I'm showing you all of this, really the big takeaway here is that this was a structured calendar, um, but it wasn't solely about rigidity. It's also about clarity. It's really understanding what your non-negotiables are during your week, making sure you're scheduling some of that deep work, and which in this case for me that week was my experiments, and then placing lighter tasks like my lab chores in the morning, because that's also when I was first getting into work, still a little bit tired and wasn't quite fully mentally ready to jump in and start doing some of that deep experimental work. So at this point, I think this is a great point to pause before I jump into our last major section. I'm just going to run our first feedback poll just to kind of gauge your feelings on the workshop. So what it'll be is just a quick Zoom poll, if I can find it. Polls, here it is. So it's a quick multiple choice poll, just gauging your how helpful you're finding this workshop. So if you can answer this on a scale of 1 to 10, that would be extremely helpful. So we'll give it just a few minutes for this, and then we will continue. All right, thank you I think it seems to have kind of leveled out now, so I'll end the poll, and we will continue. So let me just reorient here. So the last section we have today is just wanting to discuss some strategies on reducing our distractions and increasing our focus. So one of the best ways to increase and maintain our focus is working in intervals. So again, in your weekly calendar, you have your time blocked off to think about when you want to accomplish these different tasks. But now you want to be able to stick to it. So using intervals within your time blocks is really one of the best ways to support your brain's natural rhythm and prevent that mental fatigue. So breaking that down a little bit, intervals help protect your cognitive overload. So, working for those long, uninterrupted stretches of time is really tiring. So working in structured intervals, like perhaps 25 minutes, then you take a short break. It'll give yourself some recovery points, and also some time to get some work done. And it also prevents you for some overwhelm. Next, we have intervals create predictable cycles for effort and rest. So you'll be building a nice steady rhythm. So you'll work, you'll pause, you'll recharge, and you'll repeat, going through different cycles of that. And it will keep you mentally fresher and supports that high quality work. Intervals will also help you overcome some procrastination because, excuse me, these large tasks are often big and intimidating. And some of the hardest parts of getting started on those big tasks is just starting. So there'll be a technique we'll be talking about in the next slide or two that will really help break it down, breaking down those starting an interval that'll help you break down those tasks and make a more approachable starting point to lower that resistance and get you started. And lastly, these structured intervals enable sustained attention over long periods of time. You know, you're not saying I'm just going to work all afternoon on this one project. Again, you may be scheduling your time all within that afternoon, but you're giving yourselves that time of work and the time of break to make the most out of that time. So one of the most popular and effective interval-based methods in practice is the Pomodoro technique. You may have heard it, but hopefully I'll convince you to use it if you haven't. If not, this is the Pomodoro technique. So this is an approach. This approach is simple, flexible, and really effective for deep work and helps you get started. So it's a structured approach, as you'll be working in those short, focused intervals, followed by some intentional breaks. So it's designed around how the brain naturally concentrates and recovers. So the idea here is that you'll work typically in 25-minute cycles, and then you'll take a 5-minute break. So during those 25 minutes, you're committing to concentrating on that task. You're not doing anything else. After those 25 minutes are over, you have that break. And I think these breaks here at this point aren't optional because it's really essential to this method. It allows your brain to rest and reset, and then ultimately reducing that mental fatigue and allowing you to think harder and clearer. And then after you've completed 4 cycles, so 25 minutes on, 25 minutes off, you do that 4 times, you get a longer break, somewhere in the vicinity of 15 to 20 minutes, to give you that chance to fully recharge. So while the traditional Pomodoro technique, again, is that 25 minutes on, a focused interval, and a 5-minute break, it's really also important to recognize that this can also just be a starting point. You can and should customize these intervals that both fit your personal focus rhythms as well as the type of work that you're doing. So, for example, some people find that they can concentrate best in slightly longer sessions. So they may adjust the technique, being so they'll work for 40 minutes, they'll take a 10-minute break, or they'll work for 50 minutes and take a 10-minute break. Others may benefit from shorter cycles, so working for 15 minutes on and then taking a 3-minute break, 10 and 2. Really, here the goal is to choose an interval that's long enough to build up some focus, but short enough so that you don't burn out. It's really working with your brain and not against it. And then you also may have to adjust based on the task type that you're doing. So perhaps there's some deep analytical tasks, you're writing code or you're writing some things that may require longer focus sessions, while some other tasks may require shorter focus sessions. So also adjusting for the task type as well is an important consideration. There are also a ton of tools out there that can help you automate the interval timing, so you don't actually have to sit there and watch a clock, which can be inherently distracting. So a few of them that I want to highlight here today. The first one being Focus Keeper and Forest. So I've used both Focus Keeper and Forest in my own work, and I've loved both of them. So Focus Keeper is that simple Pomodoro timer and you can adjust your timing of focus and your timing of rest. It's fully customizable. Forest is an interesting one. It really gamifies focusing and through the process of planting a tree, like a digital tree. So essentially, like, you set your timer, and that's the time it takes for the tree to grow. And then at the end of that interval, the tree is happy and it's healthy. But then if you happen to break that focus, go on your phone, the tree dies. So really, it gives you that a little bit of a bit of a game or a little bit of added fun, I guess, to that interval as well. And then there's BeFocus, which is another Pomodoro timer app. And then you have PomFocus.io, another Pomodoro timer, but this one is based on a web browser. The first three are apps. There's many other different digital tools and apps to help and timers, but it's just a few that I thought would be beneficial to highlight here. And then one of the other biggest barriers to sustain focus isn't just the lack of time or motivation, it's also digital distractions. So our devices are designed to capture our attention, not necessarily not protect it. So we have really to be intentional about the environments that we're in to support the work that we're doing. A lot of this may seem trivial, but I think it's important just to have a little reminder as well. So these are some of some tips here. Again, just turning off your non-essential notifications. Constantly my phone is popping up with a new things I didn't even think I turned on, like Google News updates or different app badges are popping up, or it's buzzing for reasons I don't know why it's buzzing. So every noise that it makes, everything that it pops up, every time the screen lights up, it pulls your brain out of focus and then it's focusing you to reorient back to the task at hand. So if all possible, when you're trying to focus, turning off those non-essential notifications is great. Another tip is doing batch checks on your email instead of like on your screen. You always have your Outlook or your email there instead of it's always popping up and pulling you away from what you're doing. Setting times when you want to check your email, perhaps it's twice a day, and at times which works best for you. It prevents that reactive mindset and reacting to those messages as they're popping into your inbox and providing that constant background distraction. So this is one of the simple ways to reclaim some hours of uninterrupted time. Next one is setting some personal boundaries around social media. I love scrolling on social media. I love spending too much time in the evenings on Instagram and TikTok, but these platforms are designed to keep you scrolling. So rather than solely relying on your willpower, trying to create some rules and attention and to protect that attention. So if you want to try and scheduling in your time for social media, or keeping apps off of your phone at certain times, or keeping them on a certain device if you have more than one. But ultimately the goal isn't to eliminate social media entirely, just prevent it from leaking into your focus periods. And lastly, here we just have taking advantage of other functions on your phone, like focus mode or do not disturb, to prevent some of those notifications during some of those times. Something that I actually just learned about recently was that you can filter how the do not disturb is working. So you can like set who is allowed to send you a message during that time. So like if you really need a message, if you really want to make sure that you're not missing a message from your mom or something else is important going on, then that's the only thing that you want to allow to break that focus at that time. If it's an emergency, you can also make some adjustments there. So again, those are some of the digital distractions, but also your physical space around you is really important. Like a well-designed physical space is really huge at maintaining your focus and reducing that unnecessary cognitive load. So just those small little changes to your workspace can actually be huge in terms of your productivity. Quick things like decluttering and organizing your workspace, because that visual clutter creates mental clutter. Another good one is using signals to communicate your availability. If you're in a shared, especially if you're in a shared work environment, wearing headphones or having a little sign on your desk, or if your workspace has a door, closing that door, and really can help communicate that you're in a focused work mode and it's not an appropriate time to interrupt. Also controlling noise, or you can use white noise or headphones. Something I also don't have listed here is maybe there's some music that can get you in a groove. Honestly, a Celine Dion power ballad for me really can get me into the groove, and I can, for some reason, can really work really well when I have some of that music playing. I don't know why, but it seems to work well for me. As well as just making sure you're in a comfortable environment, paying attention to lighting, posture, and your setup. And also just changing physical locations itself also really helps. Sometimes I'm sitting at my desk at home and I'm feeling my productivity dropping, so I go sit at the kitchen island. Or if I need to just move around, you can go sit at a coffee shop, go to a library. There's lots of places that you can go. But just as a general takeaway from today, as we're wrapping up, I just really wanted to reemphasize some of the core ideas and things that you can take with you as you hopefully are implementing some of these into your daily life. So again, effective time management really is all about managing attention. Your time is fixed, but your attention is flexible. So choosing where to direct it is a foundation of all productivity. Prioritization is essential. Using tools like we talked about, the Eisenhower matrix or the ABCDE or something else can really help you give some clarity in terms of what's big picture and then what needs to be done to accomplish those goals. When trying to accomplish those goals, looking at task segmentation to make some of these tasks less daunting and kind of remove that psychological barrier to getting started. And then making sure you're scheduling intentionally, working with a weekly planner, time blocking, and working in structured intervals can really help maintain those energy levels. As well as protecting your focus. That's really an important one. Again, trying to ignore those digital distractions and environmental cues. So again, just focus is a trained skill. So keep practicing it, and as you're implementing these techniques into your work, you'll build a stronger concentration over time. So now as we're kind of phasing out of this content, as just before we go to the question and answer period, there's one thing I really want to highlight here for everybody. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is just because this is where a lot of the concepts that we talked about today were built off of. So there's something that's offered at UHN called Skillsoft Percipio. And this is a great learning platform, which is free to everyone at UHN. So this platform provides access to professional development trainings. And again, just to reiterate, this is where a lot of the topics here today were built off of. So they offer a wide range of, it's a cloud-based learning tool, and provides courses and resources to help you build both your technical and professional skills. It's really great because you can find content across leadership, communication, project management, coding, and so much more. So it's something, I hope, something that everyone will find value in. So I really encourage you to check this out. One of the really great things that Percipio has to offer is the materials for the project management professional designation. So this is a professional designation on project management, and it's really expensive to complete all of the different steps because there's some educational requirements involved in trying to get this designation, and they're offered for free on Percipio. So another really great reason to check this out. So with that, we'll move over to our question and answer period, and then for the next 12 or so minutes, and then we'll end off. So if anybody has any questions, please do pop them into the Slido. The link was just placed into the chat, or you can join on slido.com and entering the code 3642266. Oh, I see one here popping up. Great, thank you so much for those questions so far. So again, just to reiterate too, part of Slido is you can upvote questions. So if you want to have a question that you see that's really great, you can upvote it, and that'll bring it to the top of the list. So the first question I'm seeing is, given all the tools available, I find sometimes managing and prioritizing. I'll still stick with that one. I sometimes find managing tasks might just take more time than just getting the task done. Is there any way to speed up the process of managing? I agree. It definitely can take time as you're getting used of learning these techniques. But I think the best way of starting is really comes down to, again, making those lists. And I think it does come down to another question that's popped up. Lists are, I think, a great entry point. I focused, yes, on calendars. But before you even get to that point, part of your prioritization process really comes down to creating those lists and deciding and then determining what's important and what's a priority versus what's not. So I think that might be your first step, which then I think can really help speed up that process of managing, which you really understand what you need to do before that you jump in and start working on it. And if there's also some uncertainties in terms of what's important and you need some help with some of your prioritization, if it's in a work setting, particularly having conversations with your manager or a supervisor or anybody that can really help um, maybe reframe or put things into context in terms of what's important to help reach that goal. Seeing lots of questions, which is amazing. Yes, again, as I referenced, to-do lists are great, but I think that's an early step in the process, building those lists to understand what needs to get done. Is there any way that you use to stick with the calendar plan? I think it's really all, again, comes down to those sticking to that plan has to do with setting yourself those deadlines and scheduling those non-negotiables. Those are the things that have to be done. If those don't get done, maybe there's some bad things that can happen, for example. So I think it's really looking at that and working backwards from there. If you know you have to get this thing done, working back from there and trying to understand and plan the timing that's required to get from the starting point to the finish line of that task. Any recommendations on how AI can be used in conjunction with your productivity tips? I think AI is also, again, a great tool. And no, I didn't touch on, oh, I should highlight that. I didn't highlight that in the work here today, but I think AI can be used for so many different ways. So trying to asking it different questions in terms of, how maybe even how long this could take, or what's the best time of day to do something like this based on these parameters. So again, asking it any questions that you think would be useful to help in your planning um, can be really a great start. And then even if you're trying to, you have a set of 5 different tasks, how long they're going to take, you can also even ask them to kind of make a weekly plan. There's a lot of different ways that AI can be used. But just remember that, again, you don't want to put a lot of those sensitive informations in there, since a lot of this is generative. Next question is, how can you effectively combat fatigue when doing tasks? I think something that we talked about is that in the intervals. I think that's a really, really, really great way to combat the fatigue. It's still allowing you to make progress through your work, but also giving yourself those breaks and readjust it as well. If you're still getting tired and you're still having that fatigue even after a short period of time, and you need a longer break, or you take more breaks, whatever you really need to help, that still helps maintain that your workflow, but then also gives you that break and that rest and that recharge that you need, I think is a would be my recommendation for combating fatigue. Okay. I find it hard to focus when switching between tasks. For example, after meetings, I need extra time to switch to do other things like coding or reading. And I'm usually not really focused when doing those tasks. Are there any suggestions on how to overcome this? I think my first suggestion would be also just part of the way that you're planning as well. If you're really finding after your meetings that you're drained and you're tired, but you still have some work that you need to get done, try and adjust some of those to have it to try and maybe not do the coding or reading right after. Perhaps there's some more administrative things that you can do, or your emails or something else. Or if you're working in a lab and you can make media, sometimes those are pretty easy and maybe a little bit more mindless tasks that you can do to help as you're recharging and recharging to kind of get to the next step. Breaks are also allowed. I think it's not just filling every moment of every day to try and get as much done as possible. It's also, again, working with those natural rhythms. And if a break and stopping really does help with the overall progress with everything, because you're resting and you're recharging. Okay. Things are popping around. Again, I'll just clear this one question. Can you please share the recording? Yes, there'll be an email shared after the workshop with the recording. So next question is, I often switch between tasks and priorities, but I struggle to finish them. Do you have any tips to help me complete my task and manage my lists? Yes. Again, I think it's looking again at those priorities and saying really what's important and what needs to be done. If you're switching between tasks and having a hard time understanding what needs to be done to finish them, again, those are conversations that um, I recommend that are having to just to try and understand that perhaps there's needs some reframing in terms of the context of the goal of the project or something like that. So switching tasks and priorities that can really help with that. And then let's see, do you have any tips to help me complete my task and manage my list? Again, I think it all comes down to if there's some struggles in terms of finishing them, just really going back to those intervals. If it's hard to finish them and it's for whatever reason, giving yourself that a short period of time to make some progress and then giving yourself a break, but while still staying focused on that one task. I really do think that really worked for me when I was doing research and even now. When I need to get something done, it's like giving myself that structured time and then a little bit of a break to rest and recharge. Does exercising slash going to the gym at a certain time make you more or less tired throughout the day? How do you stay energized while prioritizing your health too? Again, I think this all comes down to your natural rhythms. Uh, I had in on the calendar that I showed, I did I frequently did a lot of my exercising in the morning during grad school, and that's at that time that's when I found that honestly energized me. But now my answer would be different. I don't do my exercising in the morning because it does make me more tired. So then I do shift it into the evening. So even I think just working with those natural rhythms, and that can even be day to day and week to week, year to year, or whatever. So I think really working with when you know when you know you work best, preserving those times to doing those like kind of high thinking and those high value tasks. Just with 3 minutes left, I'm also going to pop up our last feedback poll, and then I'll get back to those couple questions. Again, your feedback is really important to us, and this last poll has two questions. It's a repeat of the first question, just to gauge how you're feeling now at the end of the event. And then the second question, you just have to scroll down, and it just has to do with if you'd recommend the event to your friends or colleagues. All right. Next question is, it feels easy to lose track of what needs to be done in my calendar, which leads to missing those allotted times. This leads to having constantly adjusting timing for different events. Eventually, I just stop updating the calendar. How would you stick to a calendar schedule that you've created? I think it really comes down to, again, just being it comes down to really some honesty and then the reflection. If you it does evolve over time. So if you plan for this week that it's going to take 3 hours to do this one thing, and you've batched your tasks, you've set your intervals, you know how you're going to task it, but it worked. But at the end of those that 3 hour period, it's not done. And that's totally okay because it does grow and evolve. Perhaps when you're planning your week after, you increase the time, but in the moment too, I think it's a really great thing to do, and something I've done as well, is kind of just even scheduling some of that overflow time. If you or a catch up time in your calendar, that is one thing I've done, especially I did that more in grad school, but if you know this task is you've hopefully scheduled this amount of time for your task, but you know it doesn't, you realize that this is not going to be enough. You still have that other block of time that's protected to get to that work and hopefully finish it. And then when you're going from week and when you're planning your next week and adjusting your time, you can then increase your time and move your schedule around to accommodate for that increased amount of time. But it really comes down to using your calendar. It's really becomes a habit. For me, I found it took some time to really get into using it, but once you get using it and it becomes really an asset, and that's what I found. Great. And I guess the last question is not a question, more of a comment. So I'm glad to see that comment. So thank you all so much for coming. It's been really great providing this workshop here today. So again, thank you so much for coming. The recording will be shared in an email after the workshop. Um, and yeah, enjoy your holiday season and please be in touch. Thank you.